Hi, I'm Pam Cullen from 3 Mile Pond Girl Creates, and I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Augusta, Maine. And today I'd like to show you how I made this cute little note card using the Lasting Joy stamp set. And I got the inspiration for this card from page 64 of the annual catalog. As you can see right here, my card is pretty similar to this card. However, I did change things up a little bit. I am using some of the Vellum Basics, which is has a little bit of a design on it. I changed my sentiment up. I used the same Thinking of You from the stamp set, but we're going to do some heat embossing, and we're going to use white embossing powder and put that down. We are going to do a little bit of sponge daubing of some ink on the leaves, and we're using the opaque gems for the centers of the flowers. And it looks like in this one they used the pinkish purplish color, and I used the white on mine. And then I put a sentiment on the inside of this, hoping for better days ahead. And we're using some pretty peacock, bubble bath, old olive, and again, those Vellum Basics. So let me show you those. The Vellum Basics come in 12 by 12 sheets. Move this out of the way so hopefully you can see this better. It comes in 12 by 12 sheets, and it has 3 different designs. I hope you can see this on the camera. Let me see here if I can put this under. So this is the design we're going to be using today. So there are 6 sheets in here. You get two sheets of each of these patterns in here for $10. So that's the one we're using today. And then there's this really fun polka dot vellum that comes with it as well. I love that one. And then there are stripes. So these are the 3 patterns that you get, and again, you get 2 sheets of each one of those in 12 by 12 for $10. I really think those are great, and it gives you a little bit more interest than just the regular vellum for this piece and for any of your other projects. So let me show you what else we're going to be using to make this card. We're going to have a pretty peacock base of 7 by 5. It's a note card size that's scored at 3.5. So we're just going to fold that in half, and that will be the base of our card. And then we have a piece of 4 3/4 by 3 1/4 for the inside of our card. Then the piece of vellum, basic vellum, is 4 1/4 by 3. And then I have another sheet of 3.5 by 5, which is the dimensions of the front of our note card. And I took that and I ran it through the Timbers embossing folder. And I've already done that. It's a 3D folder. And so you just put this in. And I usually like to use these lines along the bottom to get my piece of paper even. And then you'd run that through your cut and emboss machine, and you come out with this nice pattern for the front of your card. So that's going to be the same size as the front of our card. And then we have just some scrap pieces here. We need some scrap of Pretty Peacock for this piece, old olive for the other leaves, and some basic white to stamp our flowers on. And we're going to be using, as well as the embossing folder, we're going to be using the textured florals to get these leaf pieces. So we're going to be, out of that die set, we're going to be using these 2 pieces, and we're going to trim these down a little bit. We're going to put a little more ink on them, and then we're going to trim those down. And then we're using the Stylish Shapes, and we're using the second largest of those for our sentiment piece. And again, we're using these opaque adhesive backed gems for the centers of our flowers. So let's get started with this. And so I've already embossed that. So let's go ahead and do our stamping first. So we'll need our inside piece and our piece of scrap for for those floral pieces. So we only have a couple of inks. We're going to be using Bubble Bath, which is one of my new favorite pinks. That this was in the color Refresh. It's not an in color, but it's part of the color Refresh, and so I really like that pink, and I've been using it for quite a bit of my projects. So because this is a photopolymer stamp set, we're going to use our Stampin' Pierce mat, so we just get a little bit better impression on with our stamping. So we're going to stamp 3 of this floral piece. And then because there are no dies or punches for this, we will cut out, those pieces are going to need to be cut out. So I have already done that. I've already cut out 3 pieces, those 3 floral pieces, so you don't have to watch me do that on camera. And it's a pretty simple pattern, so it's not difficult to cut those out. So and the other pieces we'll use a die for. So then the other stamping that we need to do is we'll do our inside piece in Pretty Peacock. And we're going to be using, from this stamp set, that we're using the Thinking of You and Hoping for Better Days Ahead. So those are the 2 sentiments we're going to be using out of this set. And so we're ink that up in our Pretty Peacock ink, and I'm going to put this a little bit closer near the top, just so there's room to write down below. There we go. So our inside sentiment's done, and now the next piece that we're going to need to do is this Thinking of You. And so for that one, we're going to bring in these tools here. So this is the new, let me get the name right. I wrote it down so I can give you the right information. So this is the Embossing Editions Toolkit. So with that, you get this nice tray that's going to catch something in there. You get the nice tray that's going to catch all of your embossing powder while we're doing that, and you'll see when we get going. You get the embossing buddy, and then you get this nice little brush for when you get embossing powder where you don't want it on your project before you use the heat tool, and this nice set of tweezers. These tweezers are great, and you don't have to just use them for this. You can use them for all. I find myself grabbing them all the time. They work really well if you're trying to tie bows and just hold pieces together. This is a really nice pair of tweezers. So let's get started here. We're going to take our piece, and I've already cut this with our Stylish Shapes piece. So you would just, again, run this through your cut and emboss machine, and you're going to come out with this piece here. So before we go do our embossing, we use the embossing buddy, and what this does is it just takes the static and helps that embossing powder to stick where you want it to stick better on your project. So then we'll stamp in our Versamark ink that Thinking of You, and you're not going to be able to see this while I'm stamping it because it's clear, but once we put that powder on, you'll be able to see it a lot better. So we'll try to center that on our piece, and you can do this either way. You can stamp first on a piece of paper and then cut it, or you can cut and stamp. It's that completely up to how you like to do that. So I'm sure you can't see that very well right at the moment. So we'll bring in our tray, and I'm actually going to use the tweezers for this because it is a small piece. And we're going to I just keep my embossing powder in this container here. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to cover that with the white embossing powder, and then we're going to shake it off a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit more. a little bit more up in there. And then you just give it a light tap and get all that excess off. So see, now you can see what I've stamped there. So then once you're finished doing this, you just take this off, unscrew this little piece, and all of your powder goes right back where it belongs, which is so nice. And you want to be sure when you get done doing this step that you put your cover on your embossing powder so that when you start up your heat tool, your embossing powder doesn't go all over the place. And I'm saying that from experience. So if I had any of, which there's actually like a little smidge of a piece right there. So if you had any embossing powder where you didn't want it, this nice little brush will get all of that off for you. So now we're going to take our heat tool, and this is going to be a little bit noisy, and we're going to turn that on, and we're just going to heat this piece, and you'll be able to tell when it starts to go, because it's going to see it's going now, so you can see it's starting to get darker and shinier. Okay. All right, there we go. There's our piece. So there's our sentiment piece done. And it just, the heat bent that a little bit, but it snaps right back. So you just want to be careful when you're doing heat embossing that you don't do it for too long, because it will burn your paper. Or you can tell as soon as it starts to get shiny that it's done. So then, where are we now on this? Okay, so we've got our flower pieces, we've got our sentiment piece, and then you would take your scrap piece of, you would take your scraps of old olive and pretty peacock and die cut again. You would die cut those pieces. What do I do with my die cuts? You would take those, I don't know where I put them. Anyway, I've already cut these, and this table isn't that big, so I'm not sure where they ended up. They're probably stuck to something. So we're going to cut 3 of these. You're going to cut 3 of these out of your old olive, and then we're going to cut 1 of these sprigs for behind this piece. So I've already done that for time's sake. So we have our 3 pieces of the greenery, and what we're going to do to that is we're just going to take a sponge dauber, and we're going to take our old olive ink and just add a little bit more to that to give it some dimension and just a little bit more of color. So you're going to just, because this is a pretty fragile piece and would bend or rip easily, you just want to gently, let's see if I can put this down so you can see it a little bit better here. So what I'm doing is I'm just lightly rubbing those leaves with the old olive, mostly on the edges, to just give it a little bit more color and stand out a little bit more on our piece. And you can go as heavy or as light as you want to. My suggestion is to go lighter in the beginning, and you can always add more, but you can't take off what you've already put on. So I tend to go a little bit lighter on the start and add to it as I go along. Love these little sponge daubers. These and the blending brushes are so fun to use to get a little bit more color, different techniques, and whoops, see what I mean? You have to be a little bit careful with this because they're kind of thin. All right, so I like how those look. So we're gonna be done with that, and I think that we're pretty close to putting this card together. We've got all of our pieces, done our stamping. So yes, I think it's time we put this together. So I'm going to move that out of the way. And I'm going to bring in, first we will add that embossed piece to the front of our card. Just going to grab a bone folder so I can get that a little bit, that crease a little bit better. Doesn't want to seem to stay down completely. There we go. That looks better. So then we're just going to take our embossed piece that we ran through that timber folder, and I'm going to use liquid glue. I'm trying to decide which side. I actually think that side looks better, so we're going to use that side. And I'm just going to take liquid glue and put that on our piece. And we're going to center this because it's the same size as that one. So we're just going to line it up top and bottom and side to side to our front piece. And if it overlaps a little bit, you can just trim that off with your snips. But ideally, if I've cut it right, it's going, yep, see there's a little bit of an edge there, but I'll trim that when we get done. So there's that piece on our front. And then we're going to put down that piece of vellum. And I've showed you this product before in my videos, and this is plus tape, and it's for adhering vellum, and it works really well. And so what I'm going to do is, because we're going to put these flowers in the center, that's where I'm going to try to isolate this tape so that once we put the floral pieces on, you won't see that I've done that. So I'm just going to put a few strips right in the center of our vellum piece, and it's not going to, I don't know what that is right there. Let's see if we can get that off. It's just a little extra. I don't think it's going to show, but just in case it is. So then we're going to center this on the front of our card. And see, you can barely see it as it is, but just as added cover, those floral pieces will go on, and you won't even be able to see that we did that. And you're going to have a little bit of looseness up here, but I think that's fine. I think that looks nice on the card. So then we're going to put that pretty peacock piece down first. And I just you could use adhesive sheets for this, because it's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky to just get a little bit of glue on these without it coming out. You could also, one of the other things I've done is you use your adhesive mat and a sponge, and you can just sponge the glue on when it's a small piece like this. I just take my tool here. I see one little piece of there. Take that piece out. So we're going to center this right in the middle of our vellum, and then we'll build the rest of this around that. Got a little extra glue. I've got a dried wipe here. I'll take that off with. So now we're going to do the same thing. At this piece for here, I'm going to leave full, I'm going to use the whole piece of the leaf. But for some of these other ones, we'll trim it down a little bit. So just going to add a little bit of glue to this. There we go. And we'll put this one, putting that leaf right about at the bottom of that vellum piece. Take a minute, I'm just going to use that again to push this down a little. And this liquid glue dries clear, so that's always good. So then this other piece is also going to be the full piece. So I'm going to put that one on, and then we'll put that centerpiece on afterwards. This goes together pretty quickly, but I think it makes a really pretty card. And our team, our Ink and Ingenuity team, does a monthly swap. And so our challenge for this month was to make a card that's not a regular A2 card. You could make a streamline card or some other kind of card. And so this is actually going to be my card for my swap this month. So then I'm going to just take this down, because this flower is going to be shorter. So I'm going to take this down quite short, and we'll put that one right in the center of these two. So if you don't have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, and I'd love it if you join my team. We do a lot of fun things. I do card classes, and we do team swaps, and we have team meetings. And so if you're interested in finding out more about what that entails, I'd love to chat with you about that. And if you're watching this video and you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you did that as well. All right, so I think we're getting close here. We'll be able to add these floral pieces to our stems now, and we're just going to use dimensional on each one of these to do that. So this one, I'm going to just put right there, and then we'll do this one. Let's bring this in so we can see. So I'm going to bring this one down a little bit so you can see some of that leaf over that, and we're not blocking that. And then the smaller one will go right on the top of this, and we'll overlap that one just a little bit there. All right, it's looking good. So then we will attach our thinking of you sentiment, and I think these will fit. I was thinking we might use minis on that, but these are gonna work. So we'll put 3 of those on just so it stays even and level. Also, during this month of July, what's stuck to my finger? All right, so then we'll just center this at the bottom. During July, we are having, Stampin' Up! Is having bonus days, which means for every $50 that you spend, you get a coupon for $5 that you can use during the month of August. So it's a really great time if you have things on your wish list that you've been thinking about getting. This is a really great time to purchase those during July, and then you will have some credits for August. So love it when bonus days come around. So the last thing we need to do for our card, well, the second to the last thing, is we're going to take the largest of these gems. I have a hard time getting these things on, and we're going to put those right in the center of our flowers. Let's see if I think I do better with my fingernails than that tool. And these already have the adhesive on them, which is really nice. So you just peel and stick. Easier said than done, I guess. There we go. We did it. All right. So the last thing for this card is to put our sentiment piece on the inside, and we'll be done. And so again, I'm just going to take my liquid glue. And Stampin' Up! Has several different adhesives, but my personal favorite is the liquid glue. I'm not always really great at getting things centered the first time, and the liquid glue allows you to have a little wiggle room, a little time to move things around before it actually sticks down. So it's just what I prefer, but it's all up to what your preference is. So they all work really great. All right, so there we are. We're done with this card, and I think it's a fun and pretty thinking of you card. So if you get this set and attempt this card, send me a picture. I'd love to see your photos of what you come up with for that. And again, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you did. And thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.